Except we're not quite done exactly yet. I thought I'd take one last part to just discuss my general thoughts on the game, and how my characters did, whether they met their average stats or not, and more just, again, general thoughts, impressions, and to reflect back on the playthrough, and give me a chance to get some old Mystery Vehicle music in, like this one. This is the original credits theme from that game, and it's a medley of basically all the songs from the game. You'll probably recognise most of them. It doesn't start getting good until about 1 minute in, so another 20 seconds or so. And that's when I'll start the character rankings, because unlike Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, this game has no rankings, but I like to treat it as if it did. So, I am going to go and rank my characters just like Path of Radiance, based on total number of kills. And I'll take this time to talk about them as well. So, without further ado, let's begin! In 9th place, with 29 wins, is... Elrond! Well, it's only natural he kinda got low in the rankings, because I didn't use him offensively all that much. I used him mostly for healing utility, and for that he did his job pretty well. But the thing is, all the average stats currently on Serenade's Forest are calculated based on the starting classes. Since I reclassed him to Dark Mage / Sorcerer, I had to completely recalculate his averages from scratch. Even these aren't entirely accurate, because I kept him as a mage for a couple of levels before reclassing him, so... yeah. But from this you can see, he got equal in HP and strength. I'm ignoring any fractions for these purposes. He got slightly higher in magic, lower in skill, slightly higher in speed, much lower in luck, and considerably higher in defense, but lower in resistance. So, yeah, he had a rough average balance of getting above average, below average. So his magic was actually higher than average, strangely enough. Magic stats really don't get that high in this game, like 20 is pretty good. His skill, yeah, was a little low, but he made up for that by having much better defense. I could have abused that a bit more. I think maybe if I had actually put him in harm's way a bit more often, I would have made use of his main advantage over Merrick, and that's the added defense. Okay, let's move on. In 8th place, with 63 wins, is... Come on, I mean, serious. Can I seriously stop pretending I don't know who this guy really is? Anyway, I'll just call him Sirius for the purposes of this. Sirius, yeah, he didn't get quite as spectacular an amount of kills as I would have thought. That's probably because his middle game was a little disappointing. Around the time when everyone else started to promote, his stats were looking pretty lackluster, and because early game I was a little afraid to use him because of taking away experience from people, he didn't see all that much action until the very end, when his growth started picking up, and he started having roughly equal stats to most other promoted characters. As for his actual stats, well, he actually got massively strength screwed. I didn't realise his strength averaged so high. But, to make up for that, he did get quite blessed in skill and speed. He usually does max speed for me, but skill, this is the first time I've gotten him to max it naturally. Defense also turned out a little higher than average, and the rest were mostly even. But yeah, basically, strength screwed, but made up for it in other areas. Next up we have... in 7th place, with 77 wins, is... the protagonist himself, Prince Mark of Altea. And I was really surprised here. It seems that my Mark got massively RNG screwed. Yeah, well, actually, then again, I mean, he got better in HP, but the rest of his stats, well, skill and speed are pretty obvious. But I didn't realize he actually got a little bit luck screwed. And his defense was lower than normal, and his strength was about 1 point less. I mean, it wasn't RNG screwed considerably, but he did get lower than average in a lot of areas. So I wouldn't say he was the most RNG screwed I had, but it seems he did get screwed a little bit. But anyway, on Marth's performance as a whole, I found he did pretty well. He usually does end up with better strength than me in most of my playthroughs. Except for one thing. his defense really started lagging behind later on, and that showed. Later on in the game, I was really afraid to put him in danger, because he tended to get two-hit killed by just about everything in the late game chapters, specifically dragons, but also Glower sorcerers. So, yeah, this was kind of annoying, and, you see, normally I can be a lot more reckless with him, I guess because this is hard mode, I don't know. So basically, Marth was pretty good throughout most of the game, but towards the final quarter, he started to lag behind a little bit, in terms of just his defense. But overall, pretty good performance. Next up, in 6th place, with 86 victories, is... ironically enough, Marth's fiancée, Sheeta. And here's something I didn't realise throughout the entire playthrough. My Sheeta got strength screwed. I knew she should have been doing more damage than this. I mean, 18 strength at max level is still not that great, but 16, yeah, she actually did get a bit strength screwed. I never realised that. Of course, she pretty much maxed everything else you'd expect her to max, so I can't really complain there. She did have higher defense and resistance too. So, yeah. And again though, 26 speed cap, it could have been a little bit higher for Falconite, but all in all, she did pretty well as a mage killer and, you know, killing off weaker enemies like thieves, or occasionally mage dragons. So, I can't really complain about her, she did a pretty good job overall. In 5th place, with 90 wins, is... Narval! And overall, he ended up pretty much exactly on his average stats, which is good, because at least this time, he didn't get luck screwed. Yes, in my very first playthrough of this game, Narval did in fact get majorly luck screwed. And that was just completely ridiculous. But, well, in this playthrough, he actually got a little screwed in defense and HP, but he got massively blessed in resistance. That's pretty insane. But again, for the most part, he turned out pretty typical. You know, typical Swordmaster, he doubled most things, criticals a lot, just what I'd expect, and since Swordmasters are really useful in this game, since they're one of the few things that can consistently double towards endgame, yeah, he does his job really well, and I like using him. Next up, now this is interesting, there was actually a tie for 4th place, with equal scores of 92 apiece. 4th place goes to... Bast and... Ogma. I'll cover Bast first, because Ogma got a higher percentage of battles to kills, so he technically ranks a little bit higher. But anyway, Bast, well, somehow he ended up with 1 point of magic higher than he should, which is weird, and higher defense, and he got majorly luck screwed. Wow! That was ridiculous. I have no idea how his luck ended up so bad. Really, he has a 50% growth, and according to the averages, he should average 23. But I'm not even sure if I wrote down his final luck stat correctly. It may have been 17, but still, that was some major luck screwage, and that was kind of annoying. But anyway, Bast did his job pretty well, hitting things hard and doubling most of the time. The only problem is, towards endgame, 24 speed is not so much of a good speed cap. Which is why, as amazing as Bast is, if you're using reclassing, I would recommend reclassing him to Berserker and not Warrior. That being said, his ability to use bows did really come in handy a lot. And so, yeah, I will admit that was pretty useful, but 24 speed cap is still kind of iffy. Right, let's go on to Ogma. Ogma pretty much turned out exactly as I'd expected, maxing HP, strength, skill, speed, and having decent luck and defense. Although his luck and defense were about 1 point lower than their averages, that's not that big of a screwage to begin with. His resistance is a little higher than average, but only a tiny bit. So basically, he turned out pretty much exactly average. Ogma, well, he surprised me early on with a lot of cool equips, and he did pretty well for himself throughout the game. I'll get to that later. But, for the most part, his speed cap really started to show later in the game, and he wasn't really doubling as often as he should have been. So that is a problem. That's why I think that in general, the hero class is not the best class in this game. I think Sword Masters have been edged out of this one. That's not to say Ogre is good, he's still amazing, but his class, yeah, it's taken a bit of an indirect nerf, just due to the fact that enemies are just much faster than now they used to be. Anyway, let's move on. In third place, by a nose at 93 wins, is... Due to how broken she is, and the fact that she joins early, I pretty much expected Capria to get this high in the ratings. And in terms of her averages, well, she got HP screwed pretty badly. I in fact had to use an angelic robe to make up for her HP, and she wasn't tanking nearly as well as she could have been because of that. That was really irritating, because to me I was starting to consider that her low HP, I was starting to call it her one weakness. Turns out, it shouldn't have even been a weakness. She should have had high-ish HP, but I kinda got screwed in that area. So that is annoying. Of course, he also had the problem that the 23 speed cap meant she really didn't double much in the later few chapters. But, because she was so amazing throughout the entire rest of the game, I'm willing to forgive her for that. Yeah, Capria is pretty broken, and she's one of the strongest Pegasus Knights in the series. I got a bit blessed in defense, and I'm really glad for that, but I would have liked a bit more HP. But still, she did really, really well. In second place, with a mighty 103 wins, is... Was there ever any doubt? Oh wait, she didn't actually get first. That's interesting. Well then, who got first? Well, you probably found out by now. But anyway, Nerisu, well, yeah. Okay, all I can just say is, they're pretty broken, and they slaughter just about everything. Now, of course I can't show their average stats, because the average stats of my unit, there's no real one averages, they all vary wildly. Not only that, but I reclassed her an awful lot through the playthrough, which would have thrown out any traditional calculation of averages. So instead, I'm just going to show all of her stats in all of her possible classes by her max level in this video here. As you can see, pretty ridiculously powerful in just about any class. So I don't need to go into that anymore. Let's move on to the one you've all been waiting for. Finally, in first place, with a massive 105 wins, is... Good job, Ryan. Congratulations. You are officially in first place of my entire army. And he just edged out Mary Sue. That is incredible. So, Ryan, well, he had a bit of issues at the start. He got a little speed screwed sometimes, then once he promoted to Sniper, the extra points in speed were really, really useful. He was doubling everything, he was slaughtering stuff, and then he started leveling up again. And then this was when the RNG decided, hey, let's screw over his speed stat. He didn't really gain speed very much, and that impacted his ability to double severely. Towards the end of the game, the RNG finally decided, hey, you know what? I've been mean to him for too long. I'm going to throw him a bone and let him start getting speed now. and it caught up a bit. Of course, it still ended up 1 point away from his average, but still, it was enough for him to double most things in the endgame. So yeah, overall, Ryan did pretty well, although he had some issues early on, and some issues in the mid-game simply because the stupid RNG would not cooperate. But again, overall, as you can see there, he got blessed in HP, luck only slightly, and specifically defense. I've never actually had Ryan max defense naturally. I usually have to use a Draco Shield on him to get him there. But yeah, this time he actually managed to max defense all on his own, which was pretty interesting. And that led to me using him in interesting ways. Unlike most archers in the series, I could throw this guy onto the front lines without any concerns at all. In fact, for a good majority of the game, he was one of my main tanks. I would literally just put him on the front lines and use him to block off choke points. That's almost unheard of from an archer or sniper. And it sounds ridiculous if you tell anyone you're using an archer as a tank, they probably laugh at you, but Ryan can actually do that, which is really strange by archer standards. But yeah, it's actually really great. And once his speed catches up, he can slaughter just about everything. So, Ryan didn't disappoint me. He turned out well, just like he usually does. And with that, we're done with the character ratings. Except not quite. I've decided to see what happens if you rank characters not just based on kills, but based on ratio of battles to kills. This is what's used to calculate the tactics rating in most other Fire Emblem games, and generally, a rating of 40% kills to battles is usually considered pretty good. But if you rank my characters on this, does that do anything to change the order? Well, I found out it certainly does. Yeah, so if you look at this, you'll realise that Narval in fact has the highest tactics rating, if you want to call it that, with a ratio of 74% of his battles ending with the enemy killed. That is pretty amazing. Elrin, meanwhile, shot up from 9th all the way up to 2nd, but that was mostly because I generally didn't have him fight things he usually couldn't kill, and I kept him out of most combat. So that's more of me being more conservative than him actually being amazing. But hey, at least he jumped up some places. 3rd is Sheeta, and you'll see an interesting pattern here. You might notice, ignoring Elwyn for a minute, just about everyone who got over 60% in their kill to battle ratio are ones who specialise in speed. I think this just goes to prove how important speed is in this game. Because enemies are naturally faster overall, if you don't have a high speed stat yourself, you can't kill enemies as efficiently as someone who does have a high speed stat. So this shows how important Swordmasters and other speedy classes are in this game, and that's something that can't be really underestimated. Ryan is a little lower given that he had speed issues early on, and so wasn't doubling and killing enemies very often. And well, Sirius was the lowest at this point, but I guess this is because, he had issues doubling mid-game. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. But of course, these are just the characters I use in my main party. If you go by characters overall, with percentages of kills to battles, you'll notice that 2 of my guest star characters, who I only use for 1 chapter each, actually have things up with feats. Nagi kills 8 times out of her 10 battles, and that's a pretty high ratio. This was probably because of the fact that she generally one-shots all dragons anyway, so that certainly helped. Paula, on the other hand, well, she had an amazing ratio of 6 battles, all of them resulting in kills. That is amazing, and that goes to show just how broken Paula is. I didn't use her, but that was just 1 chapter's performance, a 100% kill ratio. That is pretty ridiculous. That is the power of her starting off with a silver lance and a high speed stat, and that really does help on the higher difficulties. So Paula is amazing, and I'm glad I actually got to show that. There were 2 more characters in my main party who probably couldn't really partake in this whole kill ratio thing because they didn't do it all that much, but they were still useful and part of the party nonetheless, and I still want to show their average comparison, so here they are. First we have Fina the Dancer, and it turns out she actually got screwed quite a bit. She got a little blessed in resistance and luck, for her level, Oh, wait a minute, ignore that. The average there should say level 27. These are the averages at level 27, the level she ended up at. Actually, wait a minute, I think she ended up at one level higher. Damn it. Forgot about that. Alright, just ignore that for the moment, but still, this should apply because her skill got a bit screwed, her strength got quite a bit screwed, and her HP got considerably screwed. So, she actually got RNG screwed a bit. Fortunately for Fina, the job she does doesn't really rely on her stats. She was still really useful for her dancing abilities regardless. I remember I mentioned that back in Shadow Dragon, I really missed dances, and the lack of dancers really bothered me. Now in this game you actually get one, and she certainly makes herself useful. You've seen throughout the whole playthrough, I've kept her in my party the whole time, just on virtue of how useful that ability is. And on the few times she actually fought, she could handle herself well with a lady sword, so yeah, she's got that going for her. And next up we have... oh dear. Ouch. That's all I'll say. Ouch. Militia was my main healer for pretty much the whole first half of the game, and I may have continued using her, were it not for the fact that she got horribly RNG screwed. I mean, really horribly. Actually, wait a minute, ignore that for a second. That skill should be a plus, but even then, yikes! She got screwed in almost every single area. Her magic got screwed massively. She's almost 5 points behind. Her speed, she's 3 points behind. And she's even lower on her defense and resistance. Her defense should be really low in general, and... oh, sorry, I don't have much to say about this. I had to drop Militia from my party after I got all her supports, simply on virtue that she got screwed over way more than anyone else in my party. And that was just... oh my... Yes, Militia actually turned out really well for me in my very first playthrough of this game, and she's usually one of the best clerics you can get, but with me, she got massively screwed. This just goes to show that no matter how good a character is on paper, in practice they can always get screwed over by the RNG and end up terrible. Militia, unfortunately, just happened to be the poster girl for that in my playthrough, so, such a shame, she's usually so good. But oh well, let's move on. I'd now like to take some time to remember the exploits of my characters, and the highlights and lowlights of the playthrough. So, without further ado, I give you my final award ceremonies. Okay, my first award is for Best Level Up. This one has to go to, well, this moment. That was the closest thing I've got to a perfect level up in this whole playthrough. And, well, the only stat that didn't rise there was one that was already capped. So, I'm gonna give this one to Mary Sue. As the worst level up, well... yeah, sure, my very first no-up came from Mary Sue, but she'd already maxed out her skill and speed. She had an excuse. Elrin had no excuse for that. He'd only just promoted, for goodness sake, and none of his stats were anywhere near maxed. Which means that, yeah, that was just a pure, complete, total RNG fluke. That meant that none of his stats rose at all. Not only that, but he got that after killing an Ice Dragon, and after his horrible luck with Ice Dragons before, that just added insult to injury, so... yeah, I'm gonna give Elrin the award for worst level up in the playthrough there. My next award goes to overall most awesome moments. Now, you might think this is a bit strange, but I'm actually going to go with a moment that occurred on the fail channel. And you'll see why. I was so frustrated this happened to be a failed run, because, well, this was successful, I would have raved on about it for ages, it was amazing. So, given that I still caught this on camera, I am going to nominate this one for my pick for the most awesome moment I've had in the playthrough. Here it is. 3 consecutive 15% crits. The chances of that are about 2% of 1%. That is absolutely amazing, and even though Sirius did die later in the phase, that cemented itself in my head as one of the most awesome things that happened in the whole playthrough, and so I'm going to nominate that, despite the fact that it actually happened in a failed run. I'm going to give an honourable mention, though, to Marth finishing the final boss with a crit. That was amazing, it was cinematic, it was perfect, I could have not have asked for that to have gone any better than it did. And that was my first successful run as well. So that was just perfect, and that gets the honourable mention. But for sheer ridiculous luckiness, I'm going to give Sirius the award for this one. Now, as for biggest epic fail moment on my part, it's a no contest. During Chapter 13, moving fast up here and attacking the Wyvern with a hand axe. Not only did this only result in him getting killed by the reinforcements next turn, but this move served absolutely no purpose. Even if he had hit, he wouldn't have killed the enemy and thus would not have gained enough experience to level up. So I did all that, ruined a perfectly good run where everything else was going perfectly, just for what, about 15 experience for one character? Yeah, that was probably the single dumbest thing I can remember in my recent Fire Emblem playing history. And yes, I am a complete moron for doing that, and I am still kicking myself over it. So yes, that's the biggest epic fail of this playthrough, my sheer stupidity in making that move. Next up, we have the award for Most Favoured by the RNG in matters not pertaining to growth rates. This means which character got the most luck with their hit rates, their crit rates, and dodging enemies when they needed to. For this, there was one very clear winner, and that winner is Ogma. Not only did he get a huge amount of fluke crits in the early game, let me just show you some of them. And there were many, many more. So much more, in fact, that I was originally planning on making a tally of them, and then I just lost count. That really should tell you something. Not only that, but he was also the most favoured by the RNG when it came to miraculous escapes, or ridiculously, suicidally reckless moves that ended off paying off massively, like this one. There are so many ways that could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. And Ozma managed to take all of them and say, you know what, screw you, the RNG goddess favours me. That was amazing, and for that, he deserves recognition. Not only that, but he actually did that twice. Unfortunately, I am so annoyed that I lost the footage of this. Back in Chapter 14, I had this incident that I like to call 4 Ice Dragons, 1 Turn. It was exactly what it said. Ozma took down 4 Ice Dragons in one enemy phase, 3 of them by criticals. All of them attacked him, and if any 2 of them had hit him, he would have died. He dodged all of them, and critted 3. So that was pretty ridiculous. And that was back at a point where, yeah, Ice Dragons were really dangerous. So, yeah, that was good. I'm just so frustrated I didn't get that one on camera because my emulator just had to choose that moment to crash. But for the time being, I think that miraculous Garnet escape is more than enough. Just for you guys to know that, yeah, the RNG really favoured Ozma this playthrough, and I gotta give him credit for that. So, yeah, good one. Anna seems to like you. As for who gets the dishonourable award for least favoured by the RNG goddess, well, that's a no-brainer. Yep, Elrin gets crit hacked by dragons. I mean, I could have blamed it on his low luck stat, but in all honesty, the same thing with a similar type of enemy happening twice in the playthrough, that's just pretty ridiculous. So Elrin, you get the Comedy Value Award for most disliked by the RNG goddess. Next up is the award for most ridiculous overkill. Now, originally, this was going to go to Bast for this moment. Yes, a crit when one hit would have been more than enough to kill the enemy. That resulted in a total of 132 damage if I've done my maths right. And that is pretty crazy. Unfortunately, something crazier happened in not 1, but 2 of my failed runs of the final chapter. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Yep, Ryan's 192 damage Parthia crit against a Wyvern. Of course I'm biased, given that happened to an enemy I absolutely loathe, but still, that was easily the largest amount of damage I've seen done in a single critical this playthrough. So that award has to go to Ryan for, yeah, doing that. That was amazing. Even though it happened in a failed run, it actually happened twice, and I'm so annoyed it didn't happen in a successful run too. But anyway, I still caught it on camera, and I still think it's the biggest overkill moment of this playthrough. My next award is for Best Performance of a Guest Star. A guest star character is defined as one who only stays in the party for a short while, no more than about 2 or 3 chapters. I had a couple of characters like this, usually they were ones who were free to deploy for 1 chapter, but that was basically it. Out of them, the award for Best Performance goes to Nagi. For the short time she was in the party, she was good for one thing and one thing only: killing dragons. But she did an absolutely amazing job of it. And because of that, she wins the award for Best Performing Guest Star of this playthrough. In fact, I probably couldn't have done this without her. Her blocking off the reinforcements in Mage Dragon form, totally destroying them with her Divine Dragon form, it just made my job so much easier, and she did amazingly well for herself. The honourable mention, however, goes to Paula, for her stellar performance against the reinforcements in Chapter 3, and again, she was the only one in the whole playthrough to have a perfect battles to kills ratio. That is amazing, and she deserves credit for that. Paula is broken, and I know I didn't show it in this playthrough because I didn't use her much, but really, she is amazingly broken, and use her, you won't be disappointed. So she gets runner-up for Best Guest Star Performance. Worst performance of a guest star? Well, I think we all know the answer to this one. Thomas's stint in the party was very brief, but it landed him in the fail channel for his efforts. Yes, Thomas, you were a burden all along. But a source of much hilarity. And, well, that pretty much ends my awards for this playthrough, so I'll just go on to say just my general impressions. This video's already gone on long enough, so I won't say all that much. I've probably always said most of this before, but this game is a huge improvement over Shadow Dragon overall. All of Shadow Dragon's major flaws have been fixed. The lack of character development was fixed by the support system and the addition of much more dialogue between characters. The fact that you have to kill off your army to get side quests is now removed. There is so much about this game that improves on Shadow Dragon so much, and this game seriously succeeded in every way Shadow Dragon failed. And which means it's such a shame that this game never got released outside Japan, because it is easily the better of the two DS games. Which is why I'd like to take this moment to thank the Heroes of Shadow translation team. You guys are absolutely amazing. If it weren't for you, I would never be playing through this game on YouTube in the first place. And you did a great job at the translation, seriously. A lot of it is almost professional localization quality. Several of the supports, particularly the dialogue with characters like Luke, are actually genuinely funny. It takes a good localizer and translator to do that. Seriously, I look up to you guys. I'm an aspiring fan translator myself, and if my works can be anywhere near this level, I will be happy, because you guys are amazing. And I don't know if any of them are listening to this, but yeah, I can't thank you enough. So thanks to the Heroes of Shadow, you guys are all awesome. Also, everyone who's watching this, go download the patch. It's amazing. If you want to play this game, what are you waiting for? It is really good. This game, in my opinion, well, it's actually up there in my top 3 Fire Emblem games. Previously, it went Fire Emblem 4, Radiant Dawn, and then Blazing Sword. This game actually kicked out Blazing Sword and took 3rd position. Then again, though, when Awakening comes out, it'll probably reshuffle my ratings in my head again. But for the time being, yeah, this game made my top 3 games in the whole series. I enjoyed it that much. And I enjoyed playing it that much. I mean, I'm gonna have to stop soon because I'm actually losing my voice now, I talk so much. But I don't care, I've had so much fun, really. And yeah, I've had fun with this playthrough, and I didn't actually think this would be the first playthrough I ever actually fully finished. But still, I mean, so for everyone who stuck through this thing till the end, thank you for watching, and I hope, you know, some people at least derive some pleasure from watching my works. And I hope to see you all next time. Now, this game's coverage is not over. I will be covering the BS Fire Emblem chapters, plus the 3 downloadable content chapters. That might not be until a little later, though. I might take a tiny break, but for the time being, about my next project. Now, I know a lot of you are going on about wanting me to do Fire Emblem 4. Yes, I will get back to that eventually. However, there are some unforeseen complications in that, mainly regarding my save files and the fact that the computer I used to do that on is actually totally dead. Not only that, but the method I used to record that is really, really terrible, and I'm going to actually need to try and find a new method of recording, possibly a new emulator, one that lets me actually record off the emulator itself. Now, if that's the case, I may end up having to restart Chapter 7 from the beginning. I wasn't that far into it, though, so it's probably fine. But I'll just need to find some way of importing my save files, so it might actually take a while to get to that. So, for the time being, in terms of my older playthroughs, you'd probably be more likely to see Advance Wars 2, or even The World Ends With You continued when I get around to them. They're just a little more convenient. That's not to say Fire Emblem 4 is totally cancelled. It's just that, yeah, I might not get back to that in a little while. In fact, when I do a totally new playthrough of a new Fire Emblem game with commentary, I'm actually starting to think the next one I do will be Gaiden. I'm actually quite interested in Gaiden, and I've heard a lot of good things about it, and its fan translation. So, plus it has some really good music, and it has some of the best 8-bit music I've ever heard. So, I probably quite enjoy Gaiden. The next Fire Emblem playthrough I do, you know, it might end up being that. Who knows? But I'm probably going to take a little break from Fire Emblem playthroughs for a while, because, let's face it, Awakening is coming out soon, and that's pretty much going to give me my Fire Emblem fix. You know, enough of it to satisfy me for a long time. Now, I'm planning on getting a 3DS capture card, and I probably will end up recording Awakening, maybe doing a playthrough of it. I've actually got 2 playthrough ideas in mind for that game. I might as well tell you now. I've got, of course, I could do a sequel to the whole Mary Sue thing, and make Mary Sue 2 Awakening Edition. That was my original plan. My second plan, however, is to do a challenge playthrough of that game. What I like to call it is the One Big Happy Crom Family playthrough. The playthrough where you are only allowed to use Crom and members of his family in your party. No one else may directly try and fight enemies. That sounds like an interesting challenge, and I might actually get around to doing that, possibly without commentary, I don't know. If I'm doing the game twice, I probably will do it non-commentary on one of the runs, and the Happy Crom Family playthrough sounds like the one I probably not want to do commentary on, because it's a bit of a specific challenge with specific rules, and I wouldn't be able to talk about the general stuff of the game that way. But that will not be until much later. I don't foresee me getting a capture card for 3DS until at least September. For the time being, I have another playthrough in the works. I'm already planning it, and I've already written up stat sheets for it. But it's not Fire Emblem. One that has stat sheets similar to ones that is in this game, but it's not Fire Emblem? What could it possibly be? Well, I can also tell you that in this new playthrough, and in any new playthrough I do, the fail channel will be returning. It probably won't be returning for some of the older playthroughs like FE4 if I get back to them, because I haven't actually specifically recorded fails for that. But in any new playthrough I start, the fail channel will be a regular feature. And it will be a regular feature for this next playthrough I do. And what is this next playthrough? Well, you'll see it when it comes up. I might need to be recording it for a little while before I actually start uploading it. But let's just say it relates to another big reveal of a game that's coming out this year. I decided to take a trip down the memory lane and look back on one of the older games in one of my other favourite game series of all time. I'll just leave you with those hints, and with that, the main story is over. I will see you for the post-game features, but until then, see you next time. This is Big Clinky, signing off.